Hi, and welcome to Getting Biblical, the show where I usually drink too much and talk about my favorite Bible stories. I am Matt Smith, and thank you for joining us today. So today we're going to do things a little bit differently. We are going to veer off from our normal schedule or normal planned formula for the episodes. I felt remiss if I didn't bring it up or didn't talk about it. It's been really on my mind for now a year, basically, to do an episode like this. Of course, I am referring to today, as I'm recording this, is Tuesday, November the 12th, 2019, and it is the 1-year anniversary of the passing of Stan Lee, right? Needs no introduction, right? Absolute legend. Just so thankful for everything that he gave to us, gave myself personally or whatever, with Marvel Comics, with Spider-Man and Fantastic Four, and just everything that all entails. Fast forwarding to how it's evolved to the Marvel movies that we have now, and just everything that came from that, and we're gonna talk about that a little bit more, and how actually I do think that there's a untalked about connection between what we normally talk about on the show here, with the Bible and everything, and how unspoken or untalked about how that did lead to giving us the comic book heroes that we have here in the West today, and that there is I think a correlation there, and we're going to get into that. And I hope that by the end of this episode you'll see where I'm coming from and my hot take kind of on the whole thing. But it's just something that's been kind of simmering in my brain, and I needed to get it out. So appreciate you guys bearing with me, and just let me talk slightly sober. I've had one so far to drink, because it is the anniversary of his passing. He wasn't much of a big drinker. I felt there was a couple quotes that close friends of his have gone on to say that every once in a while, if the occasion really called for it, he would say, well, I believe this calls for an adult beverage, and that was his go-to. There was this one article I found by a guy, Jim McLaughlin, who in the 90s worked for Wizard magazine, and I guess had built up a little bit of a friendship with Stan. You can go online, you can Google, you can find it was he wrote this article for Wired magazine, I believe, in reflection of his relationship with Stan. And I believe in that article, the only thing he really quotes as ever having seen Stan drink was a screwdriver. Simple vodka and orange juice. So I didn't have any orange juice today, or I would be drinking that in his honor. Instead, I just went ahead and figured for such a guy like Stan, it deserved me to bring out my good stuff. So I went ahead and pulled out my favorite bottle, my Lagavulin. I talked about it before on the show. And that is what we're drinking today, in moderation, just a little bit, just, pouring one out for those that we've lost type of thing. Although not pouring it out, I'm drinking it. But I'm going to go ahead and top off my glass. And with that, this bottle that was actually gifted to me for my birthday 18 months ago is now empty. It's now finished. So here's to you, Stan. Anyway, there's so much about Stan Lee that we see him in the cameos. He just had such a light behind him, I think, right? Just seemed like such a great guy. And what a lot of people don't know is that Stan Lee, is not actually, it's not his real name, of course, right? I think we all knew that. But his real name is Stanley, first name, last name, Lieber, right? So Stanley Lieber was his born name, which means that he was Jewish, right? So that's a Jewish last name, and he was raised up Jewish. And there's a lot of Jewish people that started with the comic book industry way back when. You look at Joel Shuster, Jerry Siegel, the two guys that created Superman, both Jewish. We already talked about that in a previous episode with the Moses-Superman connection, similarities type thing. We've got Bob Kane and Bill Finger, who was originally Milton Finger, but the creators of, they're both, creators of Batman, both Jewish. Joe Simon, the creator of Captain America, Jewish. Jack Kirby, can't forget Jack Kirby. We owe so much for Jack Kirby's innovative art style and his amazing ability to just make dynamic and cosmic and everything pictures. Love Jack Kirby. He was Jewish. Anyway, so a lot of those those creators of comics, Western comics back in the day, so many of them were Jewish. And we'll kind of delve into that in a little while. I don't think that Stan, and I think everyone pretty much agrees, or anyone that knew him, he wasn't, especially later on in life, was not a religious man, right? He lived most of his life not really subscribing to most of the, to his Jewish upbringing or his faith. Seemed like a great guy. Everybody, loved him, just not super devoted religiously. And his wife, Joan, she wasn't Jewish at all. Not that that matters for making comic book stories or anything. Do you know the story of his wife? That's a pretty great story. How they met and everything. Let's go ahead and let's dive in. What are we at? This will be a short episode. Let's talk about. So Joan, his wife, was actually British. And during World War II, she met one of our U.S. soldiers, not Stan, a guy named Sanford Dorf Weiss. And he was a U.S. Air Force guy, and he was stationed over there. And they met, while he was serving, went on a date, and then 24 hours later, they got married. Sounds like it should be a disaster, right? Like, that's a very quick turnaround. One date, 24 hours later, let's get married. They ended up staying married throughout the rest of the war. And then after, we won, then defeated the Nazis and everything, the war was over. She returned with him back here to the U.S., to New York, where they lived together, and she continued her modeling career over here. 4 years later, after all that, still married, she finally meets Stan. And I've heard two different accounts of this first part of the story of how he met her. But in essence, Stan was supposedly going to a modeling agency, the one that she worked at, in order to ask out one of the models there, specifically another girl. There was another, a target, one in particular he was supposed to. I've heard some reports that it was a blind date or like a setup or something. Like a buddy of his was like, hey, I know this girl. She'd be great for you. You need to go meet her. I don't know. There's a couple different little reports floating around there. But either way, he was going to this place, this modeling agency, to officially ask out this other girl. And when he gets there, he knocks on the door of the modeling agency, and Joan answers. And upon seeing Joan, Stan falls instantly in love. His jaw proverbially drops, and he tells her, that's a great line. This could be a super creepy line if you didn't have the charisma, maybe, or the whatever. I don't know what it was. They had obviously a animal magnetism or an instant attraction to each other, but this is a line that could definitely go south for you. But when he saw her, he told her, jaw dropped, all that, and he goes like, wow, like, I have been drawing you my whole life. What he meant is that, he was an artist, he was a doodler his whole life, and he apparently kind of had this one girl type, is like go-to how to draw a female that he would always doodle. And little did he know that his whole time, now, after all those years of doodling just this random girl or whatever, here in front of, opening the door for him, was the face that he had been doodling his whole life, right? And the line worked, luckily. She was enamored. She liked it. She didn't think it was creepy. And he asked her out, and she agrees, even though she's married. And they start going out, I guess. They start dating. I don't know at what point. I'm not trying to get in the stickiness of it, affairs or whatnot or whatever, but it went very quickly. It was not a long drawn out thing either way. They dated for 2 weeks, and they decided that they wanted to get married. A little bump in the road was she was still married to the other guy. This all sounds crazy, right? This is all like Stan, like we love him, right? And this all sounds insane. And it would have been if it was anybody else. But I tell you what, they decided to get married, and she's like, well, I gotta divorce my other guy first. And so just like you can go to Vegas and get married like Elvis Presley or whatever at the chapels, apparently that was the only place they could go to get 24-hour divorces or something like that. So he puts her on a plane, flies her out to Reno, Nevada, for a like super quick 24-hour Elvis themed divorce, and he sends her out there. And this is back when they don't have like cell phones or anything. You can't like text her or anything. It's hard to reach her. So she's over there, and he's back in New York, and he's just like thinking about it, can't stop thinking about it, and he can't like check in on her. He's like, what if she gets cold feet? What if she decides not to do it? What if she doesn't, am I going to lose her? All this kind of stuff. So he gets on a plane and flies out after her like the next day or 2 days later or something like that. Like immediately, like I got to go reconvince her all over. Like he's built up this whole thing in his imagination of like she's not going to go through with it. He lands over in Reno, and she's there, and like, great, I'm glad you're here. Like, you didn't need to overthink anything, but let's go ahead and go through with it. So they go ahead and get the divorce. She gets the divorce from her previous husband, and then they immediately, like the next day, they both get a chapel wedding or whatever. They go get a quick wedding, and evidently the same official, the same person that gave her the divorce, was also the person that married Joan and Stan. So just a wild like 2 weeks. They've been like 2-3 weeks. They've been together at this point. Just a crazy story, and this should have ended with heartache or just like whatever, like not a good ending. But they lived happily and in love for the next 79 years until Joan passed away in 2016. May she rest in peace. And so it's one of those once in a lifetime Disney story type things where if it works, it works, I guess. They just, when you got to make it happen, I guess. I don't know. Not necessarily words to live by or like well, if it worked for Stan, it'll work for me. I don't think any of us should try that exactly, but yeah, it's a wild story. No reason that a story like that should have a happy ending, but here we are. And like you would think like someone that makes like these snap decisions, right? Married the first guy after 24 hours, married Stan after 2 weeks, and then divorced her previous husband. That sounds like just like a mess of a woman, right? Or a person in general. Just a person like, whoa, you need to, you are very impulsive. You need to chill out. But every account I've ever heard is that she was an amazing person. She's the reason we had the Fantastic Four, right? Spider-Man, everything. Literally, Stan was frustrated with his job and comic books and everything. This was before the Fantastic Four and all that. And he was going to quit. He was going to finish it up and be done with it. And she told him, hey, this one time she was not impulsive. Or one time she wasn't whatever. She goes, hey, before you quit, chill out, hang out a little bit. And she said, listen, if you're going to quit anyway, why don't you just do whatever you want? And like, what are they going to do? Fire you? You want to leave anyway. Like, just go make one, instead, because that was back when they were making like, what were they making? Like cowboy comics and I'm trying to think what else. Like just other, like just random things that never really took off, but it was just like pumping out garbage for kids to buy. And she's like, go make something that you're really proud of, something that you pour your heart into. That way, when you quit or get fired or whatever it is, you can at least say, at least I did it my way. And he goes, yeah, Joan, you're right. Okay. And from that conversation, we got the Fantastic Four, which then led to the Hulk and Thor and the X-Men and Iron Man and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, just a great woman, evidently. Yeah. So just right. I mean, like behind every great man is a amazing woman, or whatever the saying goes. Like that was Joan all the way. So let's go back to, I might be rambling a little bit here, but so like we were talking about, Stan was Jewish, right? And she, I don't think really had a big religious affiliation, or was maybe Catholic. I don't know. I can't remember. But either way, and I think this was like, the story that I'm going to tell now is like kind of probably where he fell off from his religion or like, affiliation really with Judaism as a whole. Because when they were together, they tried to have children. They ended up having two. The first, she's been in the news. That's JC. She's the one that was there with him and still, I think, holds the rights and everything for him. Like, she's still there. The second one that they had tragically passed away 3 days after being born, right? So that's a tragic story. That's horrible. So they had those two. And after the second one, that was as traumatic as that was, they didn't try again. They didn't want to have any more. But then they realized that they had a loving home and that they wanted more children. They wanted to raise up more children, and they decided that they should adopt, which is amazing, right? It's I have so much respect for anyone who does that. It's such a hard thing to do, and to realize that you have a family that you could give that gift to a child in need, right? To adopt. And that's what they were going to do. So just another thing that made Stan and Joan an amazing couple and amazing people in general. But the story that I read, the story that I found, was that the first agency that they went to happened to be a Jewish adoption agency or orphanage or whatever they are. I don't know. They went in there to try and start adopting, get the process rolling. And they would not allow them to continue the adoption process because they considered Joan and Stan, their upbringings or religions or whatever, to be a split family. Stan was Jewish, she was not. And they did not want to give a child into that type of a home just because of that. Evidently, Joan didn't see the need to convert to Judaism or anything like that, and so they shut the door on the Lee family. And can you imagine? How cool would that have been if Stan and Joan had been the Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt of adopting children, of the comic world or whatever? It breaks my heart that it went down this way, that they weren't able to go and start adopting kids. I don't know, it would have been amazing to, it sucks to be an orphan or, to need to be adopted, right? That's baseline. That's shitty. But then, to get adopted by Stan Lee, and how amazing would that have been? That would have been a whole story in and of itself, I think. But they got the door shut in their face just because of that one thing. And who knows? Maybe there was some things that we don't hear. Maybe they're like, oh, you married your first husband after 24 hours, and then you met together, and 2 weeks later you divorced the one guy, and now you guys got married. Well, this isn't gonna last, right? Because they don't know the end story that we do of they lasted 79 years until she passed away. They don't know the end story. They just know what they're seeing right there. So maybe there were other things, and maybe they just used that as an excuse. I don't know. But in retrospect, right, seeing things how they played out, it sucks. It feels really bad. But at the time, of course, I assume, right, it broke Stan's heart also, right? He wanted to have a family, wanted to do this with his wife, and I think it was a defining moment of when he finally, my interpretation of, or my assumption, I guess, when he finally let go of his religious beliefs and kind of strayed away from structured religion or anything like that. And I don't think he was really that religious previously, but I feel like that was any straw that broke the camel's back, as it was, right? That being said, it doesn't change the impact of his Jewish upbringing. The culture, the stories, the impact of anti-Semitism, especially during World War II, all of this, that's something that doesn't go away. And here's really the point, I guess, of this episode, and how I think it all connects to the show in a greater sense. Whether you're religious yourself, whether or not you believe in God or Jesus or whatever it might be, the American comic book industry and the Bible, this is my hot take, are intrinsically connected. And even more specifically, Judaism, but altogether, they are intertwined more than people think about or talk about. Right? That's my hot take. Without Judaism, we would have no Spider-Man. So when you take Judaism and Christianity, there's something really unique about those belief systems and those religions that isn't found in a lot of other religions or beliefs in the world. The stories are different, the characters are different. The things that are found in the pages of the respective holy books are different. If you look at compared to Norse mythology, for instance, right? You've got Odin, Thor, Loki, all the gods, everything, and the same for the Greek gods: Zeus, Hades, Poseidon, etc. These are all characters, and you can read, and they had their own superpowers and lightning bolts and whatever, strength, and but they weren't benevolent. Powerful, yes. A force for good, not really, not usually. Zeus could throw lightning at you just because he was bored. And Thor, the original Thor, real great at beating up frost giants and batting stuff, right? He did on occasion protect innocents, but he did it because he liked to fight primarily, or he did it to help protect the other gods, not usually to protect mortals, right? He was a hero to the gods, not to just everyone. And he still had a hot temper and all this kind of stuff. So the basis for all of these, are like, look at these powerful beings that we should look up to just because they are powerful. We have to like fear and worship them, not because they're, and you could say that same. I already hear the arguments like, oh, what about the Old Testament and stuff? And like, yeah, but whatever, we'll get to that. And like ancient Egyptian beliefs and like Hinduism, all these polytheistic beliefs, mostly stories of powerful gods doing powerful things. And like sometimes it's like, cool, yeah, like Ra, right, in Egyptian ancient Egypt stuff. Thanks Ra for carrying the sun on your head and riding in a chariot in space around Earth so we have a sunrise and sunset. That's cool, thanks. It's beneficial for us here on the planet that need the sun to live. But it's still like so different than having a hero figure, someone to rise up and help save people, a savior. That's very biblical. Yes, the Bible is about God and the creation of the universe and his master plan or whatever, but it's also very much about the people that are involved with it. The nobodies that stood out and stood up and became the hero, right? Moses stood up and led the people out of slavery. I mean, God kind of told him told him he wanted him to do it. He gave him the instructions, but Moses did it. Moses was the leader. He was the mortal guy, the hero. Joseph, thrown into slavery by his brothers, turned it around and helped everyone in Egypt and his own family, survive the famine, saved countless lives. Of course, Samson, right, literally had superpowers, super strength, saved his people from the bad guys as well. We talked about others. Esther, she stood up again to save her people from genocide. Joshua, King David, Daniel, right, Lion's Den, all that. That left-handed guy who killed that fat-ass king, I can't remember his name. Whatever, like all the way to Christianity. And of course, with Jesus being the culmination of all that lead up, Jesus, lived a perfect sinless life, an innocent man who took on the sins of the world to pay the price and offer a path of salvation for all humanity. The Savior, right? The guy. And yeah, I mean, he was God come down, made flesh, and all that kind of stuff. So not just like a nobody dude, but still that like Savior idea. The person standing up and doing a thing, not just cowering in fear of Zeus's lightning bolts and we have to worship the gods because this, right? The Bible's about covenants with God and man, and that's how we get our quote unquote saviors, or our people to stand up and help save the other people that can't do it themselves, that type of thing. This idea of someone either being called upon or just seeing what needs to be done and then doing it, that idea isn't super represented in a lot of other religions. And I think that's an idea that is hardwired into Jewish people and the culture, even if they don't realize it. And I think that's where we get our idea of Western, superheroes in general from, right? Looking up, looking for someone to be a hero, someone standing up. And I could probably do another, like a bigger, like how, I haven't done the research exactly on this, but like, a bigger comparison of like how our stories in the West have evolved versus like Japanese, like their types of stories, not just like anime and manga necessarily, but like the older stuff that they grew up with. What was trying to think like the story of the Dragon Ball, why am I drawing a blank, was Journey to the West, that type of thing or whatever. The Monkey King, like maybe the same thing. I don't know. I'd have to do like a deeper study, and maybe I'm just making up a bunch of stuff and I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know, just an idea that was rolling around my head. But I think it's overlooked that all these guys, the guys that created Superman, the guys that created Batman, the guys that created Captain America, Jack Kirby, did all the art for things, and et cetera, et cetera. That's just tip of the iceberg. There's a bunch of other Jewish guys in there, and I think that something that gets overlooked and talked about, and I don't know why I decided to get on a soapbox about this today, but I wanted to talk about really the fact that I miss Stan Lee, and I'm sad that he passed, and I hope he's resting in peace. And I guess this was the thing that struck up in my head as a way that I could talk about it on the show without it feeling super selfish or something, and just as a therapy session for me. So anyway, next time you're at the theater waiting in line to get your tickets for the next big summer MCU blockbuster or whatever, just remember me. Remember this episode. Remember what we talked about. Think about Stan, of course. Think about Jack Kirby, Joel Schuster, Jerry Siegel. Hope that you take a moment and think about these aspects and remember these stories and the link between Abraham, Isaac, Joseph, and Peter Parker. Right? That's it for today. Quick little episode. Thank you guys for sticking through with me. Rest in peace, Stan. Thank you for your light, your creativity, for teaching us all what it is to be a hero. We miss you, and we love you 3000. Hope you all have a fantastic week. Cheers.